So Paul Smith, welcome to SHOWstudio.
Hello.
How's it going?
Very good. Bit hot, but it's good here. I like it. It's a very posh studio right in the middle of London. Belgrave here, smart.
It's lovely, isn't it?
I'm tucked away in Covent Garden, so not quite as smart. I'm in a whole fruit and veg building.
Well, enough about the present, because I want to go back and talk about your earliest beginnings and talk about...
What, when I was this big?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I'm interested in your earliest memories of fashion, because you've talked before about how you weren't interested particularly when you were growing up, but
I mean, I can't remember. I think I was born at 11, because I can't remember anything before 11.
Nothing.
And then I got my racing bike, and then I became involved in the world of cycling. And so I think I was probably around 16 before I actually can remember anything about fashion. Yeah, I got a suit from the place I was working. I was working as a gopher in a warehouse, you know, going to the post office and unwrapping parcels and stuff like that. And they sold clothes, but they just sold clothes. They weren't fashionable clothes, just clothes. And then one day, this funny green 4-button suit came, and it was called a San Remo. And I thought, that's all right, I like that. So that was my first little touch of fashion. I felt very posh in it.
So it was more about the feeling that you get from a particular item, it wasn't about...
Well, I think it was because I'd never really thought about fashion at all in any way. I just wanted to be a professional racing cyclist. And then suddenly this suit arrived, and I've always been quite slim and tall, so it was a skinny cut suit, you know. San Remo was based on all those La Dolce Vita and all those movies, so it was little skinny legs and little skinny jacket.
What was it you loved so much about cycling?
I love the feeling of the open road. I love the wind in my face. I love the freedom. I started going out on my bike with the local cycle club when I was 12, so it was very young. Looking around, there's no parents. Oh, this is all right. Quite like this. Not a parent in sight, and I was just going out with a few people from the cycle club, and it was good. And then I realised I got a bit of a competitive spirit, and I started racing when as a schoolboy, age 12. And then I learnt a little bit about teamwork, about helping this guy because he was good at mountains, and this guy because he was good at sprinting, and I just got hooked on it.
You wanted to be a professional cyclist, as you said. What was the point where that changed and you started to think, fashion and retail, that's your...
Well, I mean, it wasn't my choice. I mean,
Yeah.
I was out one day at age 17, training, very bright sunny day, a bit like today actually, and just hit a car. Broke my leg, femur, knee, fingers, ribs, nose, hospital for 3 months. I got up and my bone came through my thigh. Oh, it was horrible.
Oh God.
And those days, you took a lot longer than it does now, because you have to have your leg in traction, and it just take the weight for it to mend, and it's all a very slow process. When I came out of hospital, I arranged to meet a few guys that I'd met in hospital, other patients, motorbike accident, car accident. We all got to become friends. One said, "Oh, why don't we meet up, have a drink?" I'd never been to an English pub, because when you're a cyclist, you don't drink, you don't smoke. It's very about keeping fit. Glucose drinks and early to bed. Probably boring in hindsight, come to think of it. But by chance, the pub one of them chose was the pub where all the art school people went, and it was brilliant. I mean, after a few visits, started to talk to a few other people, and suddenly, "Oh, what do you do?" "I'm a young architecture student." "Oh, I'm a graphic design student." And I didn't even know what graphic design was, no idea. And then suddenly this whole world opened up. People were saying things like, "Oh, well, the Bauhaus." And I didn't know what the Bauhaus was. I thought it was a house down the road. And then Kandinsky and pop art and Andy Warhol and Corbusier. And then eventually I met somebody who was opening a little clothes shop. Dad was setting her up in a little clothes shop. She was going to make the clothes, and she said, "I have no idea how to open a shop or what to do." And I said, "I do," even though I had no idea either. I was 18, and so I found the shop, helped her out, did the lease, met somebody called a solicitor, just stuff I'd never done before. So it was brilliant. And then I helped her open the shop, ran the shop for her, started doing the window dressing, and slowly progressed from there.
I'm glad you mentioned that shop, because your background, it is commerce rather than sort of fashion design. How has that affected how you've operated from then?
Well, I think one of the reasons why I've managed to survive, in quite a nice way for a long time is because I've got this sort of balance between okay at design and okay at business. Because I ran a shop, and when you run a shop, open the door 10 o'clock, close the door at 6 o'clock, have to pay the rent, understand about customers coming in the door. And in a provincial town, which it was in my hometown of Nottingham, you get the same customer coming over and over again. So it's always your job to move the shop around, keep it looking fresh, change the windows. So it's been really a fantastic ingredient, in addition to my ability to be able to design. Although I'm not a sort of edgy designer like a lot of the amazing people you've had in this studio, but I'm very capable of coming up with ideas, and I suppose I'm more of a stylist than really. You've talked before in interviews about that idea of finding a balance between image making and rent paying.
Do you think that's something that's quite missing in the industry with some of the designers that we've had in the studio?
Well, I think in Britain we're so brilliant. We've got gold mine of talent here in London, especially, and in Britain, and there's some amazing universities and colleges. And of course, it's unfortunately so many people are just into the design side, and in today's world, which is massively competitive and full of too many designers, too many companies, and you've got to have this understanding about the balance between image, being ahead, being interesting to magazines and to do your fashion shows, and the balance of commercial aspects to make sure it all can continue, because that's the hardest thing.
You said that you're more of a stylist, which I find really interesting, because there's an element of what you do which I think straddles fashion and clothes. And I'm very interested in the difference, what's high fashion and what's commerce and what's clothes. Yeah. What do you think you create?
Well, I think at the beginning, well, first of all, just to put it in perspective without boring all your audience, but my teacher was Pauline, my girlfriend then and my wife now. So after working for 3 years in the shop, I met Pauline. She was teaching at the art school in Nottingham. She had trained as a fashion designer at the Royal College of Art in London, and at a very high level, because then they used to teach couture fashion. So they actually taught you how to make clothes and the importance of proportion, the importance of stitching, how to put a sleeve in. She taught me all that just at home, because I left school at 15, and she taught me all that at home. And so my actual background was understanding about the importance of good quality, proportion, scale, stitches, beautiful buttons. So right from the beginning, it was always quite simple, but actually really lovely quality. And at the time when I started out, there was loads of young designers that were far more talented in terms of creativity, but sadly a lot of the clothes they made weren't that good of quality, and they fell by the wayside because they'd deliver things to a department store in America or something and get all the clothes back, and it sadly didn't work for them. And with mine, it was just sort of okay. It was just nice, good fashion, but in good quality. And that's how the whole Paul Smith thing came about, which was, classic with the unexpected. It was just the fact that there was always this little secret, hiding in your pocket, or like the shirt you can't see, but it's got embroidery on it, but it looks like a regular shirt, but it's got some embroidery on it. So it was always these little, it wasn't ever high fashion. I think that's also helped with the continuity of Paul Smith, because it's always been very wearable. It's, I suppose the flip side is where it's never been taken as seriously maybe as I would have hoped by some of the fashion gurus who are more impressed with design which is more complicated or more more worked on.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I wanted to ask you about your relationship with fashion journalists and fashion critics, because I think from my perspective there's an idea that the more commercially successful you've become, it's taken even less seriously in a sense, because people do fetishize the new and the young.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, I think, you know, the odd thing is that you assume that when you're a young student studying photography or film or design or being a presenter or an interviewer, you presume that you want to earn a living from it and you want it to be successful. But the odd thing, especially in this country, in Britain, is that when you're commercially successful, it's like, oh, well, you're not necessarily as creative or as cool as somebody who's doing things which are a bit more attention-seeking. So it's a bit of an odd thing, but luckily I'm very at ease with life, so it doesn't worry me, you know.
So do critics' opinions not bother you then?
I never read any of the stuff anyway. I don't really read very well anyway, so it's my dyslexia, you know, so I'm not very good at reading. I normally hold the newspaper upside down, you know. No, I mean, I just don't read the stuff, don't read it. Normally when there's reports on a fashion show, the collection's already sold anyway. So we will probably sell the bulk of our a fashion show collection a month in advance of the show. So the important thing is that so many young designers think the show is the main thing twice a year. And for a lot of them, it is the main thing because it's theatre, it's attention seeking. But I'm under no sort of illusion that it's part of the process. It's very important, but it's just part of the cocktail. It's not the only thing.
This leads me actually very nicely to my next question, which was about whether fashion critics matter in a sense. And I was going to ask you where you thought the balance of power sort of lay. Does it lie with the reporters and the journalists, or does it lie with the buyers? And it seems you're saying it very much lies with the buyers. I
think you know, critics of restaurants or architecture or fashion, of course it's an important job, and it's very interesting for the public to see and read an opinion. It can have an effect, you know, if you constantly get criticised for doing something, then you can learn from it as well. So I mean, although I might not necessarily read all the criticisms or the reviews, let's say, not criticism, I'm very aware that, you know, my staff will say, oh, they didn't really like the shape of that, and so you know, you take it seriously, but it doesn't mean they're right. It just means it's an opinion, and sometimes they are right. It's case by case, really.
You mentioned that sort of commercial success is seen as being at odds with creativity. And do you firmly believe that building a successful business is as creative as designing a collection?
I think it's all, I mean, in my opinion, life is totally about balance. Totally. This interview now, my relationship with my wife, my staff, it's everything. It's all about balance. It's all about, if you do too much of that, it's excess. If you do too much of that, it's too boring. So it's all about getting the balance right. So creativity, vital to keep moving forward, but without the basic product as well, which you sell in larger quantity, then the balance goes the wrong way. So balance is vital.
And is that affected how you run, because you have 15 different lines, is that how you invest?
Yeah, I mean, we have a 30 collections or 28 collections a year, and the whole business is based on a triangle, and the top of the triangle is the fashion show collection for men, the fashion show collection for women, and the top of the triangle means that it's a very narrow distribution. It's very selling to the smart shops that will sell all the big very beautiful other collections around the world. And then as you go lower down, it gets wider, and the wider means it's a wider distribution, and you get to the bottom, accessories, shoes, bags, scarves, jeans. You'll sell to 80 shops in a country, let's say. This is not factual, but 80 shops where the main collection will probably sell to 8. And so it's all about getting the balance right between having your top products in the top shops, and then the more commercial products in maybe shops that have second lines or something like that. And that's how it all works, and that's why I'm still here after years, a lot of years.
How involved are you in the day-to-day sort of design processes? What's your day like? How do you spend your time?
As you probably know, I'm early bird, so swim every morning at 5-ish, 5:15, get to work at 6, which I love. It's absolutely brilliant. I love London early in the morning, often take lots of photographs. I love the sun coming up in the summer, if we ever get any. And then get to work, it's really quiet for 2 hours, and then the day starts, and then it's an 8 o'clock appointment, a 9 o'clock, a 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and that's can be so varied, lots of hats, you know. So we do all our shop design in-house. We've got a big team of shop designers, young architect, interior designers, all our marketing's in-house, sales, everything. So my job can go from shop design for 2 hours to talking to the marketing team, to then a whole afternoon of working with my assistant designers. So I'm on this floor, I've got some designers here, and then all the next floor below me are all full of my designers, and we all work together. And I've got a very eclectic office full of like books and objects and kitsch things and beautiful things, and they come around the table, we talk about things. Obviously, when the key thing is, like, we're just starting for winter 14 now. Winter 14. So you're always working a long time ahead. So I've got to make sure this particular collection is about that, and this collection's about that, and this collection's about that, so they don't all cross over with each other. So one might be the colours from Mark Rothko, and the others might be a film, and others might just be your knowledge of the market and just clothes, you know. So it's my job to sort of start everybody off and then keep my eye on the collections daily. So it's a constant thing. So I'm really, really hands-on, really involved. Watches, spectacles, shoes, socks, everything we do. And we do, you know, we design upholstery fabric for Maharam in America, a big company in America. So whatever we do, there's nothing that goes out that I haven't actually at some point been involved with, which is really lovely.
Is that what you get the most satisfaction from, working with this big team?
The satisfaction I get is that every day is a new beginning, and every day is fantastic, and every day is so positive, and I'm absolutely blessed with being the owner of the company, so I don't have to discuss anything with anybody about whether this fits in with the corporate identity of the company, and what's the shareholders are wanting more profit, greedy buggers. So, you know, we're just free, we're just open to do what we want to do, and the key thing about creativity is spontaneity. You've just got to go for it, and you can't, by the time you deliberate, somebody's in the fast lane and overtaking you, so just go with it. So it's very much about instinct and being your ingenuity and your knowledge of what you do for a living, really.
You say someone's in the fast lane overtaking you, but you also touched on this earlier, that there are lots of incredibly talented designers who've fallen by the wayside. Why are you still here? Is it that balance and still here?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think why I'm still there is that I love my job, and so it's an absolutely honest thing. Originally the business was started with Pauline and myself, my wife, and it was very old-fashioned the way we built the business. It was sort of the mentality. I mean, this is silly to say what I'm saying, but you know, it's the mentality of the sort of fireplace with the jam jar and the money in, and that the husband bought in, and if there's money in the jam jar, you can spend it, and if you can't, you can't. So we've never borrowed any money as a company, ever. We're very solid, but we built like this, really, really slowly. And unfortunately, so many people want to grow so fast because they are so full of information through the internet and through blogging and twittering and the whole thing. So they're always making comparisons. Oh my God, he's earning that, she's doing that, they're opening that shops, and everybody's panicking all the time that they need to keep up. And I'm not like that. I'm just very happy to have the freedom of my own day and make my own decisions, and that's because I built it very gently and very slowly, never overstretched ourselves. And even during this more difficult time, because the world's in such a mess at the moment, we're still seeing increases because we've never really pushed it, whereas a lot of the big companies were pushing the last 15 years to expand more and more and more to keep up with their hedge fund investors, and they're the people that have put money into them, so they've had to run, and I've just been having a gentle stroll.
You touch on the pace of the industry then when you mentioned kind of this pressure that designers are under, and I think especially young designers really feel that. There's more fashion weeks, more shows. Do you think that pace is kind of quite unsustainable that we're at the moment?
I mean, the pressure at the moment for any company in the world, not just in fashion, is enormous, because the world is financially has been so messed up in the last sort of 20 years for all the reasons we know. Casino, banking, egos, greed, all that stuff, and so many people are under enormous pressure at the moment to keep up. And sadly, a lot of the business are really struggling, because there's not the disposable income that there used to be out there. There's not the will to buy things like there used to be, because people are being more cautious about the future. So the pressure out there is enormous for everybody. But for Paul Smith, luckily we've never really pushed it so hard, that we've always been a little bit more comfortable and not so worried about this more difficult time.
I want to go back a bit and talk a bit about what you create and how you sort of started in fashion. And we talked about you working in a shop, and I want to talk about your retail experience that you've created today, because that's obviously something that's very dear to the brand and dear to you, is creating this very exciting retail experience. Do you think that retail elsewhere has become a bit sanitized? Why is that so
well, I think what's happened with a lot of the big brands around the world is that they followed the idea of a business plan. I think unfortunately so many people in the world, including lots of human beings and young human beings, are their life is like a business plan. It's like what you should do, how you should do it. And the thing is, with a lot of the big brands, they were under the pressure to open 20 shops a year or whatever, and it's a formula which is akin to the coffee shops around the world or anything. It's just a formula, building it up with lots of marketing, opening lots of shops. But unfortunately, a lot of the shops are like a rubber stamp. They're all very similar. And my shops are none of them are the same, because I've always hated that idea. I've always liked the idea that you go into a Paul Smith shop and you're just a bit confused why one of them is full of vinyl or motorbikes, or it could be anything, or ceramics or old cameras. And that's always because I've just wanted people to enjoy going into the shop. And also because I'm not a confrontational person. I'm a person who likes people. My first little shop was 3 meters square, about the size of where I'm sitting now. And so when a customer walked in, they were literally in front of you straight away. So that was very confrontational. So I needed some sort of aid to help me out, to make people more relaxed. So if I was on a little backpacking holiday with Pauline and her children to Greece, I'd buy some notebooks from an old stationer's and some penknives from a ship's chandler's or something like that, and I'd bring those back to my shop, and they were like an icebreaker. They were a little aid when people walked in, and like, hello, how are you? Oh, do you see these? I just got these when I was in France, or I just got these when I was on holiday. And it was just a way of making people feel more relaxed. And so I've kept that up. And as you know, that's been an enormous influence on a lot of shops around the world. And Colette in Paris and Corso Como, Sassani, just both of them said to me independently, our inspiration came from your shop in Floral Street in Covent Garden, which was a shop that was selling clothes, but actually didn't just have clothes, it had lots of other things as well. And so that came from just my desire not to make people feel awkward, really, and just enjoy the experience. And so that was it.
I'm really interested you say, making people feel at ease, because this goes back to what we were talking about the difference kind of between high fashion and clothes, because I think there is definitely an openness and a vibrant sort of accessibility to what you do, and I mean that in a really positive way. But do you think that's also something that fashion critics are quite disparaging of?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, you're hitting the nail right on the head there. When you're too normal and when you're too accessible and when you your priorities are the road sweeper in the street that you have a chat with, or school children that write into you, or the a rock star or famous actor. I mean, when you're so diverse, people, I think, find it hard to put you into a category and know how to deal with you. And so sometimes that is just sad for me that people just think you're not sort of there because you're too normal.
But why is there this idea that high fashion has to be lofty or difficult?
I don't know, you ask them, not me. I've no idea. I mean, I've always been confused by that. I mean, we sell to shops, 72 countries around the world. Our things sit next to all the famous designer labels, and our things do something called sell. Sorry, everybody, but they sell. A rainy Tuesday in Bologna or Sydney, Australia, you open the box and you put the shirts on the shelf and they sell. And our sell-throughs around the world have always been fantastic. And I suppose that's a combination of all the hard work over the years of doing interesting things, doing alternative things, knowledge of my profession, running shops, and so it's sort of a good cocktail of stuff, I suppose. What was
the point where you realised you were a success?
Oh, I don't know whether I have even yet. I've never thought that, ever. Never. In fashion, it's all about today and tomorrow. It's not, nobody cares how good you used to be.
But did you notice a point where your shopper, because you do have a very committed shopper, did you notice them stop buying your stuff necessarily just because they liked it and they were buying it because it was
well, I mean, that's absolutely the case with almost everybody you've had in here. Whether they ever admit it is a different thing, but when you're starting out, you hope you build a little clientele, as with when Van Morrison started out or Jake Bugg started out. You build this little fan club of people who like what you do for a living, and then eventually it becomes more popular, and I don't know what all the correct words are, but it becomes just mainstream, or not in my case, I hope, but I mean, whatever it is. And so yes, definitely people buy Paul Smith at the beginning because they love what you do, and then eventually they will buy not just Paul Smith, any line, because they think they should buy it, or because it's sort of got the stamp of approval.
But given you've put so much energy into building your branding, creating this kind of narrative to it, do you not get the same satisfaction from someone buying it just because it's Paul Smith as them buying it because they like it?
No. I mean, you would love to think they bought it because they realised it was hand stitched and it had got a loose canvas inside, or it had got a hand printed lining or something like that. But and a lot of people do for that reason. But then there must be a lot of people who just buy it because it's got the labelling. But absolutely, that is not just the case with Paul Smith. It's the case with almost everybody, I would think.
How are you going to keep Paul Smith, and how are you keeping it at the moment relevant to younger shoppers?
I mean, we're just full of energy all the time, and we're always doing lots of things. So obviously, the danger of any company is getting too formulaic, and of course you have to have a base to your business. So you've got to know that you've got to do certain things every season because they work. But then on top of that, you need this little sprinkling of things that just people can't quite grab, and they think, well, why has he done, shirts with snakes printed on them? No reason. Or why have you done embroidered things? Because I fancied doing embroidered things. But that's the joy of being free, free of shareholders and free of people who are just looking for this sort of formulaic way of working. And then, of course, in addition to that, we've done lots of interesting collaborations. Probably the skill on that side has been the collaborations we haven't done, that we've said no to, which are many. I mean, weekly we get offered lots of quite nice things, but I just think, well, probably not for me. But we have done lots of things that are very interesting and very nice, and people, that's another sort of help to keeping the label special or interesting or odd or whatever those modern words are. So we've done I designed the jerseys for the Giro d'Italia, the cycle race, which has been fantastic. I worked on Leica camera, I worked on Evian bottle, I've worked on John Lobb shoes that is owned by Hermès in Paris. So there's lots of interesting things that I've done which are help people think you're okay.
So you don't worry about younger people, the kind of people that we talked about before when you were talking about, the internet and blogs and Twitter and stuff like that. You don't worry about them not feeling like they understand Paul Smith?
I don't really think about anything like that at all anyway. I don't clutter my head with thinking about things. I don't use the internet. I haven't got any email address. I don't clutter my head with looking at the computers all day long. I have 4 girls working in the office next to me who completely do all that, and so I'm totally aware of it. But personally, I love, you'll probably find that, I've just probably knocked the microphone, everybody, sorry. But, notebook, pens, always in my pocket, camera, always in my pocket. I'm a great believer in looking and seeing, not just looking. A lot of people look, but they don't see. And a lot of people spend too much time worrying about other people. If you can find the confidence just to do your own thing, if you can, which I know is difficult, then you're probably going to be all right.
You mentioned looking and seeing as well, because you love photography is a huge passion for you. Is that where that came from?
Yeah, well, my dad was an amateur photographer, and I had my first camera when I was 11, and I've been taking pictures since I was that age, and I always shoot all my own campaigns, and I think it's because I'm very reasonable price, like free. That's why they all say, "Oh, you shoot the campaigns." Yeah, for a minute I thought it was because they like what I did, but I think it's realised that I don't charge the amount that a lot of other people would. And I take pictures for some Italian magazines, some French magazines, Japanese magazines, mostly of interiors as well as not mostly, often of interiors as well as fashion. It's just like a hobby, really. And it's great to do things that still make you scared, because in my position you could just sort of carry on just doing things that you're quite comfortable with. But when you're suddenly in an apartment in Paris and you've got half a day to shoot it for 8 pages for an Italian magazine, then you get a bit frightened. So it's good. I like that. And also I do quite a lot of talks for young like schools or universities or colleges, and I'm doing one in Beijing, and I just did one in Japan. So that's also quite good, because again you feel a bit nervous. You're 1,000 people, 600 people out there, and you're talking to them, and it's pretty scary. Actually, yesterday I did one in front of about 40 of my staff, and I actually was more scared doing that than I was the 1,000 people in Japan recently. I don't know why that was. It was funny, that.
So you still get nervous? Do you get nervous before your shows anymore, or not really?
No, not at all.
Yeah, because you said the show's not everything, is it?
I've done lots of shows, and the lovely comment we have about the shows is that everybody involved in them said, nobody's shouting. There's no arguments. It's all very calm, and everybody's treated. There's food, there's drink. Everybody's relaxed, and I think, as I said earlier, the shows are important, but they're just part of the process.
I want to talk about your international success, because obviously that's something that's incredibly exciting about Paul Smith, is this range of different places that sell your clothes. What is it about Britishness and British fashion that's so successful abroad?
I'm not sure whether there is any. I'm not sure whether it's about the Britishness. I mean, if you talk about me, that's one thing, or if you talk about some of the more traditional British lines, where there's a tweed jacket or there's a waxed coat, then that is the Britishness selling. But if you look at Paul Smith, I'm not sure whether it's the Britishness or whether it's just the sort of, I don't know what the words are, quirkiness or madness or oddness, or I think it's just, I mean, I've got 265 shops in Japan, which is, as we all know, quite a lot, and I think I've just been there a lot. I've been 80 odd times to Japan. I love the country. I've never complained about the flight or the food or the hours or the time difference. So I just enjoyed being there, and I think people identify with your interest in their country, and because I'm interested in more than just fashion, I can turn my hand to talking about architecture or art or Piero della Francesca or Matisse or Palladio or Richard Rogers. So, because when you're being interviewed, people realise you're not just saying blue, it was blue, that they actually find it fascinating that you can chat about other stuff. So I think all those things have helped me do okay around the world. And also because, as you said right at the beginning of the chat, is that I've worked in a shop since I was 15, and I've had my own shop since I was 21. So you sort of know that the people you sell to around the world are looking for things that sell, and that not are just attention-seeking pieces which are great to look at but don't always necessarily sell, and then they end up in stock and using up the money that the retailer has.
You mentioned the quirkiness and the oddness that's sort of very inherent to Paul Smith. Why is that kind of sort of irreverence and wit so important to you?
Well, I think a lot. I think it's important without me realising it. Actually, I think the thing is that my father had a lovely character. He was very easy to talk to. He passed away at 94, but he still had lots of young friends, and so he was always, lively and taking pictures, and a very nice person to be with. And then balanced against that, back to the balance, is I've got Pauline, who's very clear about the importance of making beautiful clothes, and she's stopped being a fashion designer, went to study history of art, and then became an artist as well at the Slade School of Art. So I've got this lovely balance between my character and my dad, I hope. And then Pauline's very lovely, special way of thinking about things, which is still a joy every time I go home at night. Just being with her, and the conversation is still very inspiring. So I think that balance is interesting, and that comes out in me, I hope. And so it's not really a quirkiness that's manufactured. It's just
inherent.
A bit of British eccentric sort of way of being, I think.
I don't want to sound mean to you, but you've been at your brand for a long time. You've had an incredible career. When will you know that it's time to move on?
Sorry, I can't hear you anymore. I've gone. Yeah, sorry, there must be something wrong with the hearing. You listen. At the moment, I love it. I'm healthy. I think I've still got all my senses. I'm not sure. We've got a great team. I've got 1,000 staff in Europe, and we've got good designers at the head of each of the little categories that we do. Good financial team, production team, press team, marketing team. So, there is life after me. It probably won't be just one person. It will probably be somebody head of clothes for women, head of clothes for men, and somebody more like a spokesman for the company. So it'll probably be different, but I think there's something called Dior, Chanel, Burberry, a few companies that have lost their leader and kept going. So fingers crossed.
I'm sure you'll be fine.
Yeah, so far so good.
You kind of answered it there, but I am interested in your priorities of who you would want to leave your brand with, whether it would be someone whose prime skill would be as a fashion designer, or whether it would be someone who was interested in the business side. And it seems. Well,
I'm just going to say that word again, aren't you? I'm going to say it again, aren't you? I'm just going to. Yeah, of course, because the joy of my company, I think, is the fact that we're really good at design. Whether the powers that be always think that we're as good as we are, but we've not done badly for 40 years. We're very liquid as a company. We're very friendly. A lot of my staff have been with me for over 20 years. So it's just, you can't really answer the question straightforwardly, because of course you want to still be very important in terms of design and sit next to all the big guys that are out there, which we do around the world. but you still want to be able to sort of touch the young person that's coming up that wants a pair of jeans or a t-shirt, and because they're your future, you know, they're the ones that you want to do. The most interesting thing I think about Paul Smith is that the fact that we've kept like the people that like what I did for a living when I was 24, 21 has stayed with me, and they're my age now, but we've still got the 8-year-olds, the 10-year-olds, the 14-year-olds, the 20-year-olds in great quantities coming up who still love it. And that's really unusual, because a lot of the labels often take their age group with them but find it hard to replenish. And somehow or other, I think because of the many things we do, we've managed to get a bit of everything, really.
How haven't you got bored? How have you kept excited by fashion for so long?
Do I seem like a boring person?
No, not really.
Yeah, well, there you go then. I don't get bored because I've got eyes that are all over the place, and I hope that I'm childlike, not childish, but childlike, and if I've got the spirit of a child, then that's fantastic for me, and I'll never get bored, because children are very honest, they're very curious, they ask questions. Why has that man got a big nose, or why is he so tall, or why can't I do that? So by being curious, you never get bored, and by being curious you always manage to move forward and do things which are more interesting, and that's what I hope I am. And if ever you have the opportunity to come to my room where I work, you'll see that is absolutely true, because it's full of the most mad and beautiful and exquisite and low cost things, and they're all just inspiring. Every one of them is equal to me.
Paul Smith, thank you very much.
Cheers, thanks.